I think the average person knows very little about Mormonism. So here's the deal, what they believe in the first few minutes, and then discussions with Mormons and ex-Mormons on whether this belief system is true. Mormonism, or the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as they are officially called, is an offshoot of Christianity. They believe they are the correct, or the corrected, form of Christianity. Mormons believe in most of the basic Christian doctrine, but they have additional theology and additional alleged history. A man named Joseph Smith, whom they consider to be a prophet of God, claimed to have found golden plates buried in a hill in New York State in 1823. On these plates was inscribed the Book of Mormon, a history of the Hebrew people who came to North America back in biblical times and established a flourishing civilization here. According to the book, Jesus himself put in an appearance here in North America after his resurrection. Smith established a group of followers, but friction with neighboring people led to his being killed by a mob in 1844. A man named Brigham Young took over and under great hardships led the group west to Salt Lake City, Utah, where they have prospered since that time. There are roughly 16 million Mormons worldwide and about 6 million in the United States. Like the Jehovah's Witnesses, they proselytize vigorously. Mormons regard both the Bible and the Book of Mormon as sacred. The Book of Mormon is subtitled Another Testament of Jesus Christ. Some of Mormon religious terminology is peculiar to Mormonism, yet it has a recognizable counterpart in traditional Christianity. For example, the Mormon congregation is called a ward, a minister is called a bishop, a church building is called a chapel. There are temples, which are special larger church buildings where their important ceremonies are held, are off limits to non-Mormons. Rather than a pope, they have a president of the church, a man who leads the church under God's guidance. Missionaries are called elders, even though they are usually only 19 or 20 years old. Going door to door, the equivalent of the Jehovah's Witnesses witnessing, is called tracting. Males in good standing are all considered priests. Religion classes are called seminary. Someone looking into Mormonism is called an investigator. And their prohibition of smoking, alcohol, coffee, and tea is called the word of wisdom. So that's terminology. Now here are a few distinctly Mormon religious concepts. They have a regular marriage, but also a special marriage ceremony held in a temple which seals the couple for all time and eternity. They have baptism for the dead, where a living Mormon performs a ceremony on behalf of a dead person so that that person can accept Mormonism posthumously. And this concept is what is behind the fact that Mormons keep outstanding genealogical records. They believe in eternal progression, where a Mormon, through this life and the next, advances in the process of becoming a god or like a god. This concept is a major difference from mainline Christianity, which clearly presents man as a different type of being than God, and does not at all imply that we can become gods. Almost all of these concepts and terms will come up in my conversations. The Mormons practice the tradition of having their men, at age 19 or so, go out for 2 years of dedicated missionary work. My first conversation is with 2 such young men from Utah, stationed here in Massachusetts. For our first meeting, I just asked questions and didn't press any issues yet. Mormon Missionaries, Part 1. What convinces you your religion is true?
And that's what it all boils down to. We know that the Book of Mormon is the Word of God. And because we know that Joseph Smith was a prophet. Because he's the one that translated the book for us. And that he organized this church. Therefore, this is the church. All by reason of prayer.
So you know it's the Book of God because you've read it and prayed about it?
Yep.
What is the biggest misconception people have about Mormonism?
Seem to apply
lot of people in the world seem to believe that we're not Christians,
Mm-hmm.
where that is definitely not the case. As the name implies, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we do believe in Jesus Christ. Our church is centered around and focused on Jesus Christ.
Okay, that's the name. That's what you call yourselves and you see
Right.
yourselves as, but the mainstream Christianity would say your concept of Jesus is different than the true concept of Christian Jesus or real Jesus.
What concept?
Oh, I know that. I've read some articles where Christians say that the Mormon Church is not a Christian church.
Basically, the Christian Jesus is the Son of God, but is also God himself as part of the Trinity. God with a capital G. He created the world and is our Savior. The Mormon Jesus is the Son of God, but he is not God himself. He is not God with a capital G. He didn't create the world. He is himself a created and saved being. So the Mormon Jesus represents God, but is not God himself. The Mormon Law of Health.
Are there sanctions if you do? If you catch somebody having a cup of coffee, do you just sort of look at them, or do you report them?
So every person's responsible for their own
sins.
sins.
If I were good friends with you, and I saw you doing that, maybe I would feel comfortable to say, hey, that's against the word of wisdom. Or if I was close enough to you, some do that.
Mormons present their religion as rather tolerant and non-judgmental, but I don't think that's the case at all. Eventually, you'll find out it is quite judgmental, because their progress as Mormons depends very much on their observance of the things they're supposed to do, like observing the laws of health, attending services, tithing, doing their missionary work, etc., etc. If a Mormon son or daughter decided not to go on their mission, that is a major deal. Mormonism is not a liberal, laissez-faire type religion. They expect you to be committed. Your missionary experience.
Majority of the time is spent actually teaching people the gospel.
People you've already made contact with?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And it isn't always through knocking on doors. I mean, there's many methods. I mean, if you've seen the TV ads, the advertisements.
Yes, yeah, that's how I got my Book of Mormon. Yep.
Yeah, many different ways where people hear about the church and then want to learn more, and we're the people that teach them.
So when they have a TV ad and they get people with requests that come into like a central office, I guess,
Right.
and then they send those back out to the people in the areas where those requests came from.
Exactly.
Yeah, pretty good.
It's very organized, like I said earlier.
Yeah.
It has to be very organized.
Yeah. I would think if I were in a group that was going around knocking on people's doors, it would be hard, because a lot of them would just close the door in my face, and I would say, it's not much fun to be rejected a lot of times. So do you have to deal with that?
Of course,
Yeah.
it's tough sometimes. I will admit, but it is definitely worth it. You look at it now. Look at it, missionaries. When we're 19 years old, we can go out and do this, and we're the ones that do all of that. The church members don't go out. That's strictly missionaries themselves. We go out, knock on people's doors, and 19 years old. Of course, it's tough sometimes, but because of the message that we do share and carry about the Book of Mormon and Jesus Christ and a plan that our Heavenly Father has for us, it's too important to really let it get you down.
You guys have much fun?
I love it.
Yeah.
So you get fun out of your religious activities?
Oh wow, yes.
That's the church. The church to me is my life.
Mm-hmm.
It's centered around the church. All of it. That's where my happiness comes from. My greatest happiness.
Do you go to movies?
Sure.
Sure. Okay.
Well, not while we're on our missions, but
Not out here.
Really?
yeah. We spend our time strictly in sharing the gospel.
Wow. So it's almost like a
7 days a week. We're out 9:30 in the morning till about 9:30 at night.
wow.
With, of course, lunch and dinner breaks.
Women don't do this though.
They do.
Yeah.
We have women missionaries.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mormons regard women as equal to men, but with different callings, which, curiously to me, tend to be callings to be unequal. My own views of the Bible, Jesus, and God.
So just if you don't mind me asking,
Sure. Yeah.
What do you feel about Jesus Christ? What are your thoughts?
I was hoping to say this the next time, but I think I've concluded. Well, further, let me back up all the way to when I was a kid. As brought up as a Catholic, I figured people are saying he is the Son of God, and it seems what he did. The story about Jesus is very impressive and very noble, and he sacrificed himself. He taught love. So it seems reasonable to me that that's God, or that's God's representative here on earth. But then as the years went along, first I rejected the Catholic faith for a number of reasons by the time I got to college. And then I became Protestant, and became more and more liberal Protestant as I figured certain things couldn't be true. You have to interpret them in a much more liberal way. And then the last few years, studying the Bible carefully, I've decided the whole thing doesn't make sense. And my conclusion about Jesus is that he wasn't the Son of God, but he was a misguided religious leader.
Just, do you mind me asking, say, resurrection?
I don't think he rose again from the dead, no.
Yeah.
And I was talking to one minister about, why the reason I don't believe that he rose from the dead. First of all, people don't rise from the dead, so it would have to be something miraculous. If he did rise from the dead, then he would be the Son of God. So did he or didn't he? That depends on the rest of the Bible. Does the rest of the Bible make real good sense and show divine wisdom and is very consistent? If it is, okay, maybe he did rise from the dead. Maybe that was God. But I have found that the rest of the Bible doesn't make sense.
This discussion took place in the mid-90s. My assessment of the God issue is now a little more settled. I believe in the probability of a general God, not tied to any particular religion, a non-intervening God, an almost deistic God. Eternal progression. We begin our second meeting discussing eternal progression, the Mormon idea that we're on our way to becoming gods.
One thing you mentioned was that the biggest misconception of Mormonism is that people think it's not Christian. But to me it seems like it's not Christian if, as I understand it, you believe in, I don't know how you term it, eternal progression, or that you're on your way to becoming God or godlike or something. So if we're all going to become, assuming we do the right things, if we're all going to become gods, then that's many gods instead of one God. So therefore, you are a different type of Christianity than regular Christianity.
Note how the two men try to avoid the topic at first, since eternal progression is a teaching that the Mormons do not like to tell newcomers. All the oddball theology comes later once you're already hooked in.
So what's regular Christianity?
It believes in one God.
What's the difference then between Christianity and, say, Muslim, Judaism?
Right, yeah, let's see. Muslims think Muhammad is the final prophet. Jews think Jesus is not the Son of God. Christians do. So those are different religions. And if you believe there are many gods, that we can be like God, then it's a completely different type of Christianity. It's not
Christ
really.
himself said, "Ye are gods," in fact. So I don't know. I guess I can see what you're saying.
We talked about eternal progression for a while. I think the Mormon interpretation of John 10:34 egregiously ignores context. When Jesus says, "Is it not written in your law, you are gods?" he is not saying to people that they are gods. He is saying that the Old Testament refers to human beings, the ancient judges of Israel, as gods, i.e., godlike in their authority. That's what he means. And he is making some point about his own claim of divinity. But he is not laying down a doctrine of eternal progression here. If he were doing that, he would have expounded on such a basic doctrine in many other places, but he does not do that. I think the idea of eternal progression springs from Joseph Smith's fanciful New Age-like imagination, and not at all from the theology of the biblical Jesus. We discussed baptism for the dead. I pointed out that it's not a fair doctrine because there are tons of people who have died whom nobody today knows about, and so how can anybody alive now be working on their behalf to have them baptized posthumously? Elder Hyde assured me that there will come a time when everyone will have the chance to be baptized. Book of Mormon Disproofs.
But all right, here's something I think is a proof that Joseph Smith was not a prophet.
Okay.
How do you pronounce it? Ether?
Ether?
1531. Somebody cut somebody's head off. And that person, after he's got his head cut off, raised up on his hands and fell. And after that he had struggled for breath, he died. But if a person gets their head cut off, that's it. They can't move anymore.
How so? I'm not sure.
Well, if you get shot in the head, you fall right away. You don't walk around a little bit, stagger, and then go. I mean, if you get shot other places, you can stagger. But if you get shot in the head or you get your head cut off, the way human physiology is, you don't have any more. You can't get up and raise yourself up and struggle to breathe and then die. As soon as your head comes off, you've had it. It's not like chickens. Chickens can run around a little bit without their heads cut off, but humans can't.
I don't know. Good answer.
Okay, well, I would bet you $1,000 if we asked a neurologist, he would agree with me.
We discussed polygamy.
For if I will, saith the Lord of hosts, raise up seed unto me, I will command my people, otherwise they shall hearken unto these things.
In other words, Joseph Smith is saying, if I want you to have many wives, you can, but only if I want you to.
Exactly. If it's commanded, yes. If not, no.
Oddly enough, according to Joseph Smith, who claimed to speak for God, God suddenly permitted polygamy around the time Joseph Smith's wife found out he was having an affair. And now it was okay to have more than one wife. How fortunate for Mr. Smith. I have my third and final meeting with the elders towards the end of this video. Sally, a Mormon. Next I talked to a Mormon woman over the phone. Again, just asking a lot of questions, not pressing issues. I wanted to save the more critical approach for my final meeting with the two Mormon elders. However, even a soft approach here raised some consternation in this very nice woman. Note that when I raised the issue of blacks being prohibited from the Mormon priesthood, there is major hemming and hawing on her part. What convinces you of the truth of Mormonism?
Also lost, and that was restored through Joseph Smith. Now we don't worship Joseph Smith like we would Christ, but he was basically a prophet or a tool that the Lord worked through to restore his power, his authority, to perform these different ordinances, and to restore his church in its original form, being headed by 12 apostles. And basically, I think if you nail it down to one thing, that's what convinces me that this is has the truth.
That it follows the original teachings of how Jesus set up the church?
Right.
Baptism as originally intended, full immersion, not just sprinkling, and for adults, not infants.
The story goes that there was a very prominent man, a ruler, a leader, something that was dying that needs to be baptized, and he was unable to be baptized by immersion. So basically they decided, well, we'll just sprinkle water on his head and that'll be okay. And so they sort of changed the whole idea of baptism, that sprinkling now is the way you baptize. And in Christ's day also, people were baptized because they chose to follow him. They were adults, or if they were children, they're at least an age that they understood what was going on.
Yeah.
It wasn't infants.
Yeah, that's one of the discussions I had with a lot of the priests is infant baptism.
Right. And
it makes it somewhat meaningless, I think, if the person doesn't know anything.
Exactly. And baptisms for the remission of sins. Another thing that we believe is that children are not born sinful, that they don't need to quickly be baptized for forgiveness of their sins because they haven't done anything wrong.
Of course, yes, some Protestant churches do the immersion.
Right. Some of the Protestant churches.
Yeah, it's funny. His elder, he had mentioned something about basketball, and he implied that he dunks. I mean, he can dunk, the basketball. And so I asked him, "Oh, so you dunk?" And he said, "Yes, we have full immersion." You get that too. So I said, "No, basketball."
That is funny.
Differences from mainline Christianity. Sally agreed that Mormons are not generally pick-and-choose Mormons. They do tend to accept all the teachings right down the line. Mormonism is a way of life, not just a subordinate interest. She agreed that two major ways Mormonism differs from mainline Christianity is, one, the idea of eternal progression, and two, that revelation is not closed. Mormons still receive revelations on issues from God through their current leadership. Racism.
Blacks, they were not allowed in the priesthood
Right.
up till 1978.
Uh-huh.
And the priesthood is not a special class. It's not like just a very few people. It's
Right.
most of the men, actually. Right.
Right.
So doesn't that bother you, or it bothers me?
It does, actually. And to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't really know why that was. I wish I had a good reason, because it's something I'm very glad that has changed. I don't have a real good explanation. That's something I don't know. You'll have to ask the missionaries.
I'll ask them.
Maybe they'll have. It's something that comes up often, as a criticism of the church, and I don't, I don't know if, I think back, maybe way back in Joseph Smith's day, way back when the church was established, they would have been persecuted more if they accepted the blacks, because there was so much discrimination back then. I don't know. That's my own personal just opinion, that it might have something to do with the church when it was established in the way things were. But I don't know. I don't have a real good reason for that. Just that I'm glad that it's not that way anymore. Because that is something that I'm glad has changed.
I have a very good answer as to why blacks were not allowed into Mormon religious society. Because Mormonism was racist. And it was only in 1978, when they finally stopped being officially racist. Fuzzy fairy tales not thought through.
Talks of a day when the lion will eat straw. And I don't understand what that means, because what does that mean?
That's, I believe, talking about, we talked about the millennium before, when Christ will reign for 1,000 years, and there will be no, killing or death or of any sort.
So at this millennium, then animals are going to continue to exist, but they will change their...
Right. So the lamb and the lion will live together. They won't be hunting each other and killing each other.
But now that means, looking at it from a scientist's viewpoint,
right?
His digestion is going to have to change quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right, so that's going to happen, or?
In the millennium, I think there'll be a lot of changes, and maybe some of those will be physical.
Because you'd have to have 4 stomachs then, like a cow, in order to.
I don't know.
See, it seems to me like it's the words of somebody who is saying storybook type things, but if you figure it realistically, well, how can that happen?
Yeah. I don't know.
Homosexuality.
Okay, because in the last few days, this Greg Louganis thing has come out.
Right.
So my question is what's the church's attitude towards homosexuals?
Well, basically,
is it the same as the Christian attitude, which is that we're supposed to love the homosexual but hate the sin, and homosexual basically should stay celibate?
Well, it's probably similar to that. That basically, God put Adam and Eve on the earth to be a model. That's we're supposed to be together, man and wife, man and woman. Yeah, I don't know. It's a toughie. It's a toughie because I must say, as far as the Mormon Church goes, there's not a lot of place for a gay person, which sometimes I feel bad about because there are people that feel like they're, that really struggle with those feelings, and at the same time want to be a good Mormon, and it's difficult. Because I had a friend that I found out later that he was gay, and he had struggled with that for years, that he really believed this, and he really wanted to be a good Mormon, and he constantly struggled with these gay feelings. So, but as far as the basic church view is, it's that we're meant to be man and wife, that men and women are supposed to be together. So that's...
And how did this fellow end up, though? Did he end up...
He ended up choosing to be gay, actually. Went back to San Francisco and lived with some guy, and I haven't really heard from him since. So, actually ended up living with a guy that was an ex-fiancé of a friend of mine. I found out later that this girl was engaged to this guy, and he decided to be gay at the last minute before they got married.
Well, in a way, it's kind of good before it was too late, and they get married and then find out.
Definitely, exactly.
Well, thanks a lot.
Okay. Well, you're welcome.
I've learned a lot, and we covered a lot. I got all my 32 questions asked and answered to some degree of satisfaction anyway.
Good.
All right.
Barbara, an ex-Mormon. The next person I talked to was a nurse in her mid-20s. Barbara's fear of the devil.
Yeah, after I was baptized, they had this like laying on of the hands, and I don't remember what they call it, but it was done by the elders.
A ritual or ceremony to...
It's something, yeah, and we were in a room, and they tape recorded it, and they placed their hands on my head, and it was the scariest thing I've ever gone through in my life.
But what was it supposed to do, that laying on of hands? It's supposed to bring you closer to God in general, or just...
Basically, it was like them, God speaking through them.
Through them?
Yeah.
And that was scary?
It was very scary.
Did you feel like you were going to be harmed by them, or?
No, my whole body was shaking. I was so scared.
Yeah. Because you believed that that's what was happening.
Right. It was almost as if, if they could have rose me up off the floor, it would have happened. You know what I mean? It was really scary. I felt like I had more fear of the devil back then than ever. And all they kept telling me is the closer you get to God is why the devil, he comes upon you more to push you away from a religion. After that, after the laying on the hands, I totally got rid of the religion. They kept coming to my door. I mean, up until maybe 6 months ago. Okay, I kept having people coming to my door, elders, year after year after year. People writing me.
Trying to get you back.
Trying to get me back. And I finally wrote a letter to the bishop and gave it to one of the elders to give to the bishop that I didn't want no part of this religion anymore.
Male chauvinism.
Did you find it's male chauvinistic? Or?
Yes, very male chauvinistic. Very set towards the elders, their progression.
Yeah, see, that's what's so interesting to me, because they present it as though they're pretty tolerant and they treat women with respect and equality and so forth. They have different roles, but they're equal. But that's what I'm curious about in practice, is it doesn't work that way. I think it seems to me that the woman takes the brunt of it.
Yep. That's for sure.
Religious fanaticism.
And they were coming up until 6 months ago, coming to my house, sending me letters, everything.
How does your fiance feel about it?
He kind of laughs at him. I don't know. He just thinks it's kind of comical. For all these years. I mean, you figure that's 8 years. 8 years. But I haven't gone to church, to their church. And they're still coming to my door.
Harry, from Christian to Mormon to Agnostic. I found Harry quite knowledgeable. He had eschewed, you heard me, eschewed more conventional lifestyles in order to pursue his interest in religion. If I remember right, he told me he works as an overnight janitor in a fast food place. Leaving Christianity.
What happens if you don't agree with them, they can, and many or most times do, start into a personal attack. They start to emotionally calling you to repentance and how bad you are and how naughty that your attitude is. You have a bad attitude, you don't have a disciple's heart, you're so forth and so on, whatever they add to that distance. And that's what happened to me. Spent a good amount of that, I think was 3 hours, let them leashing into me. Not leashing, but attacking me.
Unleashing.
on an emotional level. Yeah. At one point, the house church, he said, if I had an evangelist calling to repentance, I'd be on my knees crying. And I was baloney. But I was basically devastated by it. I didn't really, it wasn't because they're speaking the truth, they were speaking a bunch of malarkey, but they were so pounding with it.
So you were devastated, not because you did feel guilty, but because because of their behavior towards you?
I was devastated by the whole experience, just the lashing that I got. Yeah. I don't remember saying, gee, I'm so horrible and everything, just the emotional lashing that happened. Yeah. And it was emotional abuse, it was physical, it was emotional verbal abuse is what it was. Yeah. But that's what happens in different types of those groups. They'll pressure you into conforming through those types of tactics.
Yeah. Okay, so then you left.
And then eventually I left. I don't remember how long it took, but I left that church. I started having basic doubts on certain issues of Christianity. I was wondering about the resurrection accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. And I did have, I don't know if it was at the same time that I thought, or later on that I thought about the Messianic prophecies, so-called.
Yeah, the conclusion I came to, I spent, I don't know, it must have been a month on just the prophecies, and the conclusion I came to is that when they say a prophecy is fulfilled, what they're really doing is just drawing connections. All they're doing is drawing connections.
Right, they're
making connections. They're not fulfilling. The original prophecy was not. In a lot of cases, it's not in the future tense, and it's not a prophecy.
Right, exactly.
It's just some religious concept, and then they go back to it and
use it that way
and repeat it and say this is a fulfillment.
Right.
Harry's experience in Mormonism.
Right, a lot of people that get the Mormon church, it's that it sounds good, they have a nice feeling.
Yeah. But Mormonism is very, there isn't like conservative Mormonism and liberal Mormonism.
Well, yes.
Oh, there is?
Oh, yes.
Oh, there is, okay.
Yes, in the Mormon church, not that the hierarchy would like it to be this way, but there are liberal Mormons, conservative Mormons, and moderate Mormons. But there are still liberal Mormons that believe that the Book of Mormon is nice theology, God uses it, but it's not historically accurate. It's not supposed to be taken as history or whatever. You've got the liberal mush in all sorts of religions, but those liberal Mormons, the moderate Mormons,
the moderate Mormons, you got the liberal mush and all that.
Yeah,
that's what I've found. It's very hard to pin them down or.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah. In liberalism, it's like they want to have their cake and eat it too. They want to be able
we believe this, but we don't believe it.
Yeah. You have no basis. It's just all subjectivism. Pick and choose. Yeah. It's like a supermarket religion. Just pick what you want and keep the rest on the shelf.
Yeah, that's what the liberals do. Yeah. All right, so then you were a Mormon for how long?
I was a Mormon for 2 years and 2 months, from 81 on. I got my names off the record of the church in 83.
The guys I talked to, the 2 Mormon elders yesterday, they seem to be very accepting of other religions and saying, they refer to the Jehovah's Witnesses that they've met as nice people. So they don't seem to be condemning other religions. Is that just a rosy picture they're painting, or?
That's a rosy picture they're painting. So what's happened in the early days of the Mormon Church, they were very, very, very dogmatic. When Joseph Smith, and what happened is that he got a vision of Jesus and God the Father. And God the Father pointed to Jesus saying, this is my beloved Son, hear him. And then Jesus told Joseph Smith that join none of the churches, they were all wrong, all their creeds were an abomination to sight, all the professors were corrupt, having a form of godliness but denying the power thereof. And what that says is, they ain't got it. There's nobody on the earth that has the gospel, the true, pure gospel of Jesus Christ. There's nobody on that has authority to administer any of the ordinances or to act in priesthood power. Only the Mormon Church and only the Utah group. None of the splinter groups. Just the Utah group. And Brigham Young and others being very negative towards Christianity. They've softened. They've become a kinder, gentler Mormonism now. Well, they'll say all religions have a certain amount of truth, and the Father reveals people, reveals truths. What they say is that some churches have 20% of truth, 30% of the truth, 40% of the truth, whatever. And we don't want to take away any of that truth, we want to add to it. That's the present position.
Which takes precedence, the Bible or the Book of Mormon?
So they do consider the Book of Mormon superior to the Bible?
Superior. If they say equal, then they're either trying to give you a soft sell. Always be careful of that. They're either trying to give you a soft sell, they don't understand the implications of what they believe, or they're lying to you. Or they're completely unaware of the doctrine. They're completely unaware.
Well, I think the way they told me yesterday was just what it says on the cover, that it's another testament.
Right.
So that they didn't equate it or put it above or below.
Right. That's nice. That's comfy.
Yeah.
But that's not all that they say. They believe that the Bible is corrupted. Many things in the Bible have been taken away.
The doctrine of eternal progression.
So they would put a soft coded. You really have to watch out with other groups, other religions, what they mean by certain things, what they don't tell you.
Harry went on to talk about esoteric Mormon doctrines, the three heavenly kingdoms, becoming godlike, eternal marriage, new souls coming to earth, etc.
That's a lot of theology. That's a radical theology. It's not what
confusing, jumbled mess. I think it doesn't hold together too well.
Oh, sure, but it's because that's why you won't feel the Mormon Church doesn't talk about it on the TV. When they have the TV and they have the little free tapes in the Book of Mormon, it all doesn't talk about heavy Mormon doctrine. Even the Mormon missionary discussions, if you read the discussions, they never says men can become gods. They say men can become like our Heavenly Father. They don't say they become gods. If Mormon missionaries really were plain straightforward about this, you wouldn't get as many converts. That's why different groups, they'll only tell you things in steps.
Yeah, sure. Well, Jesus, it's like the Moonies, for example.
The Moonies do that. The Mormon Church does that. Not to equate the two in many respects. But the Moonies do that, the Mormons do that, Jehovah's Witnesses do that, all these groups. Boston Church of Christ does that. All these groups do that. They don't tell you everything before you get in. And if it wasn't for the critics, they would tell you less of their history and their changes and their problems. The pressure from within and without have made them more open. They'll deal with the issues more. Other than that, you'd get a lot less. And there have been times where Mormons have lied about things to cover it up because they don't want people to get turned off by hearing too many heavy things. They use an analogy, using a Bible verse talks about the milk before the meat. For them, milk is the very soft stuff. The meat is the doctrine of God, really. The doctrine of marriage and stuff like that, godhood and things like that. But so they'll tell you everything. But that's Mormonism.
Leaving Mormonism.
All right, so now the 2 years and how many months?
2 years and 2 months in the Mormon Church. I would never leave the church because of one or two things. The whole thing would have to collapse. And it started to give way. And when I was in, I was very active. I was very believing. I was very zealous. I was the favorite of the Mormon. When Mormon missionaries had, in my congregation, when the Mormon missionaries had appointments with born-again believers, they called on me. On being their heavy artillery, their heavy backup. I used to go in their car, which was against missionaries. It was an intellectual thing for me. It's not that I didn't believe in my heart, but I wasn't going to park my brain for something I couldn't back up. That's why I'm an agnostic instead of a Christian now. I couldn't back up after really studying and delving into things, particular issues that were crucial to Christianity, not just little things, but crucial to Christianity plus some other things. I couldn't reconcile. I had more questions after than before. It was the same thing, with Mormonism. I just had things that I couldn't reconcile with evidence, with facts.
Harry went on at length, but to summarize his key reason for leaving Mormonism, he found that what Joseph Smith wrote about how the original pure Bible had been corrupted over the years is not true. The Dead Sea Scrolls and other ancient manuscripts discovered since Smith's death prove that these alleged changes were not in fact made. The early manuscripts match the current texts very closely.
It's been really easy for me. I left the church crying sometimes with all the, not just the Bible, but other things as well that was happening. So it's been an interesting journey.
Mormon Missionaries, Part 2. I attended a number of Mormon services and classes. Their adult Sunday school classes had a definite feel of indoctrination. People are asked set questions and encouraged to parrot back Mormon doctrines and understandings. It wasn't quite as bad as the Jehovah's Witnesses classes I've gone to. There was at least a little room for independent expression. Here's my final session with the two Mormon elders. Important side issue. When I was attending their services, one day I saw somebody I knew there from years ago.
Do you know a guy named...
Yeah.
He's a new guy that... yeah, okay. As I mentioned, I used to work with mentally ill people, and he wasn't part of the staff. He was part of the residents. He's had problems in the past, and in a sense, I don't want to hinder him and his making friends or progress or whatever in his life, but it's more important that I tell you that he's had a problem with kids.
Really?
Yeah. So if you find he's getting in a situation where he can be alone with kids, keep your eyes open. Don't let that happen.
Okay.
And I don't know how it's been now, but I know I just know that there was one incident where he was, I think it was arrested. Okay, so that's just keep your eye open.
Yeah.
He doesn't engineer his way into working with kids.
That's something I probably will tell the bishop.
A few years later, I see the headlines in the local paper. A kid was molested at their church by this guy. He was taking care of kids at their church. I said to myself, geez, I told them. The guy was convicted and sent to prison for many years. Fast forward a few more years, new headlines. The kid's mother is suing the church. The name of the prosecuting lawyer was given in the article, and I realized, wait a minute, I've got this on tape that I warned them. The conversation you just heard. So the church cannot make the claim that they were making, that they didn't know. I called the lawyer, I met with him, gave him the tape. He was very appreciative. I never found out exactly how the case played out, but he told me it was going to be a slam dunk. They probably came to an agreed-upon settlement. The bigger point is this. Just like the Catholic Church, the Jehovah's Witnesses, and others, these big religious organizations, though predominantly filled with normal, decent people, are, as organizations, self-serving entities who are more concerned with their image than the welfare of children. And that fact attests to their falseness as alleged divinely guided institutions. Polygamy.
Otherwise, they shall hearken unto these things. So in other words, he's saying polygamy is not right, but if I, at a certain time in history, if I want to have more people, then I'll condone polygamy. That's pretty much...
Yeah, he says if he commands, it's a go. If not...
Okay.
Nope.
All right, so when did you change the...
1898?
Yeah.
I think.
1890.
1890.
All right, so at that point, God decided, what, that you had enough people?
I don't know the mind of God. I guess he decided that was where it should go. So that's when he told the prophet stuff.
Because I think it was changed because that was when Utah wanted to become a state. So I think that decision was made on the basis of politics. It wasn't God.
Prophecy.
In 2 Nephi 3:14, Joseph Smith is talking about himself. And thus prophesied Joseph, saying, Behold, that seer, Smith, will the Lord bless, and they that seek to destroy him shall be confounded. And yet he was killed.
Yeah.
So he was destroyed.
Many times, long before he was killed. people were trying to destroy him ever since he had the first vision in 1820. And he had a great work to do, which was to organize a church, to build temples, to get the gospel rolling, to restore the gospel.
But the prophecy here is that they that seek to destroy him shall be confounded.
Very much so.
Well, they succeeded, though.
Well, not so much. I mean...
Well, they killed him.
Yeah, he turned himself in for it to be done.
Those that seek to destroy him shall be confounded.
Well, they weren't confounded. They killed him, and they said, we killed him. I don't know what they said, but they weren't frustrated in their goal. They achieved their goal.
Whenever prophecies failed, religious people intuitively adjust their interpretations in order to make the prophecy work. If Smith had meant that they might destroy him but not his work, he would have said that, but he didn't. He said they would be confounded in destroying him. But they were not confounded in destroying him. They shot him dead. Why I Can't Be a Mormon. The Book of Mormon.
I got a list called Why I'm Not a Christian. And I got another one called Why I'm Not a Catholic. And here's my Why I'm Not a Mormon.
Okay.
These would be the three biggest reasons why I could never be a Mormon.
Okay.
The first one is a subjective one. And that is, this book is probably, this is not meant to offend you, but I have to say it as it is, the most boring book I ever read in my life. I had to force myself to, and I committed myself to doing it, to read it all the way through. Mm-hmm. But it just keeps repeating itself and repeating itself, and the insights are not all that great. My conviction is that God is interesting, and He wouldn't be boring.
Okay.
So that's a subjective view of.
Sure. Go ahead.
I mean, do you enjoy reading this?
Very much so.
EX.
Very much so. Probably more. In fact, I guarantee I enjoy it more so than any other book in the world today.
Wow. Well, you're putting. I think you're putting an awful lot into it. That it just keeps repeating itself so much. I mean, even the writing style is third rate. If you use a phrase like "and it came to pass," and you use it 3 sentences in a row, that's just poor writing. And then the idea of a group falling away from God and then repenting and coming back, and that just keeps going on and on and on and on.
What do you think that might be in there?
Why? Because Mr. Smith lacked real imagination
or
real religious insight.
Or maybe God was trying to teach you a lesson.
But I'm not like that. So when I was 6 years old, I realized with my friends we shouldn't be going back and forth. We're either friends or we're not friends. When I was 6 years old. So it's not a message for me. I don't spend my life doing evil, repenting. That's what Christians do. All right, well, that's my first big objection, is that I just...
Yeah.
When I was in college, and did you ever read the autobiography of Malcolm X?
No.
When I read that, every single page has had a real good insight about human nature and social conditions and everything, and that was riveting. And this was like just the opposite. It's like, I couldn't. I would finish a page, and my mind would start to go off on separate things, and I'd have to go back to this. And is he offering anything fresh? Is he offering any insights into human nature that are? I mean, the best parts of the book are the books that the Sermon on the Mount probably is the best part of the book to me, which is not his writing.
But if you're not reading it to find out what it can do for you, or if it can do anything for you.
Yeah, I was reading it that way. I'm always open to new things that can improve my spiritual life. And with some ideas that I haven't come across before, but I don't see wisdom in this book.
Racism.
The second big thing is racism. There are some quotes in there that are just plain racist. They're just against black people and regard black skin as a curse. And to me, that's got absolutely nothing to do with God. That's just the opposite of God. That's bigotry and ignorance. It's not.
Well, and there again, I mean, I can see that it was written in the book as for those people. the curse is not on anybody today. It was a curse that was given to those people to separate them from those who were pure. But today that has nothing to do with anything.
But it's identified with black skin.
Not today, is it?
Well, then you changed your doctrine.
Doctrine was never changed. God said how long it would last. 4 generations. Today, all are accepted to come into our church. We'll put our arm around anybody.
But it shows that the person who wrote this in the first place was ignorant to believe, like Brigham Young and Joseph Smith thought that about black people, that they were cursed.
I don't know if I mean, looking at the church today, I mean, I don't know why that would really even have any effect anyways. Because
your founder, your prophet, was a racist. That's why. How could he be a mouthpiece for God if he's a racist?
Did he know any better? I mean,
if he was a prophet, he should know better. I mean, even a decent human being would know better.
He loved everybody just like we do today.
Then why in the world is he saying black-skinned people are cursed?
He did. All he did was translate the book.
Well, then the book is saying black-skinned people were cursed at one time.
God said, I curse these 4 generations because of the wickedness of you.
But if it were a book of God, it would have added that this is a temporary curse, and it doesn't mean black people are evil or less or anything. It would have pointed that out.
He said it would continue on to the 3rd and 4th generations.
No, I'm talking about it continuing or not continuing. I'm talking about it making the point that black people are not inferior.
I don't know if
that belongs in there, and it's not there.
I think it's pretty much well proven today with the church being open to everybody.
Because it was forced to. The same thing with polygamy; it was forced to. So I think these are fallible human beings at work here, and not God.
The fact that Mormonism today is not officially racist is irrelevant. If it once was, if its founder, its leaders, its scripture were racist at one time, then the truth of Mormonism is thereby refuted. From the Book of Mormon, 2 Nephi chapter 5, introduction, because of their unbelief, the Lamanites are cursed to receive a skin of blackness and become a scourge unto the Nephites. Alma 3:9, whosoever did mingle his seed with that of the Lamanites did bring the same curse upon his seed. 3 Nephi 2:15, and their curse was taken from them, and their skin became white, like unto the Nephites. That's from the Book of Mormon, Joseph Smith. Here are some more quotes, and I will simply scroll these, because I can't read them. I can't bear having these words come through my own throat. If these guys aren't racist, I don't know who is. If these guys aren't racist, there is no such thing as racism. Archeology.
Okay, well, that brings me to my last point. Probably the biggest reason, no, it's not the biggest reason. The moral reasons is the biggest reason, but the most tangible reason is archaeology. There's no archaeology to support this whole story and account of people in this country.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
What kind of research have you done?
Isn't it up to you to prove these things happened? If there are all these great cities in this country with roadways between them in these great cities with these big fortifications and walls, how come nobody's ever found any?
Go down to Central and South America.
I'm talking about North America, though.
The Book of Mormon never does speak of people being in North America.
Yes, it does.
Where?
It speaks of it. I will find this in a second. 3rd Nephi 8:12-13. But behold, there was a more great and terrible destruction in the land northward. For behold, the whole face of the land was changed, the quaking of the whole earth. And the highways were broken up, and the level roads were spoiled, and many smooth places became rough. So there's no system of highways here in North America that existed around the year 0. Yeah.
The land northward, we're talking Central America right here. And I have a greater map somewhere, but I can't remember where it is, that actually shows even a little bit better of what it possibly could be closer to. There's nothing contained in the land northward anywhere in the Book of Mormon about cities growing to the northern part of North America. Nowhere. It says the land northward. Now, when they refer to the land northward, they talk about the narrow neck of land often. That's it right there. And anything north of there is the land north. And we don't have anybody in the Book of Mormon that says we cruised up to the northern part of North America and looked around and established cities or anything.
But how did the plates get up to New York?
Moroni was the last one to live on the face of the last Nephite to have a hold of those plates. He was all by himself. And he cruised off into the wilderness. Where he went, nobody knows. Obviously, he came up to New York.
So all this took place right in Central America.
Central South America, yep.
But even the stuff they find down there has got nothing Christian about it.
Oh man. Go down and take a look sometime. Many. Over and over again, proving the Book of Mormon.
The more of the archaeology finds and things that are being found today, the more they are supporting the Book of Mormon.
Why isn't this front page news then, if that's the case?
The archaeological world it is.
Proven by archaeology that the Book of Mormon has been being supported by?
They talk about baptismal fonts, they talk about temples worshiping gods, they talk about this white God coming to the people in his Americas. All over. The writings on the walls, the things that all the hieroglyphics, everything.
It's not Hebrew. There's no Hebrew there.
It talks. Just, I'm telling you. If you could go down there and you could look, and there again, what?
Yeah, but you won't get non-Mormon archaeologists saying that. Only Mormon archaeologists will say that because they'll find a baptismal font or something which looks like one, or they'll say, that this is what's in the Book of Mormon, when in fact that's part of a different culture or religion. I don't know that much about archaeology down there, but
tell me this: how would they learn Christian? How would they learn about Christ?
They didn't.
You don't think so?
Until the Spanish came over.
Well, how did they learn about baptism then?
Oh, lots of religions and cultures have baptismal rituals and things.
How would they learn about all the writings that they have? The picture of, in fact, how would they learn about Adam? How would they learn about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
They didn't. You're saying there's evidence that supports?
Yeah.
Can you get a non-Mormon archaeologist to say something like that?
Yeah.
One of the things that it's been brought up is that horses, full-size horses, were not in this continent during this time period, and yet the Book of Mormon refers to horses and refers to elephants, and there were no elephants in this continent at that time.
I'm trying to remember exactly where that is.
Horses?
No, we know that it's in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah. Anyhow. I don't want to really go into all this, anyhow. I mean, we could go on for days and days about all this.
No. This can be wrapped up real quick. The horse is a critical thing.
Okay.
Elder Hyde responded by reading from a Mormon commentary.
After the Book of Mormon was published, however, archaeological discoveries were made that clearly indicate that horses were in the Americas before Columbus arrived. In the asphalt deposits have been that antedate Book of Mormon times. Although these discoveries do not absolutely prove horses were in the Americas in the time period covered by the Book of Mormon, 2600 BC to AD 421, they do prove horses were there before the coming of Columbus.
Yeah, but not full-sized horses, and not during the time period of the Book of Mormon.
Some scientists have now accepted the possibility that horses and men lived concurrently in the Americas before the coming of Columbus. Franklin S. Harris, Jr. There is a body of evidence both from the mainland of Central America and even from rock drawings in Haiti itself tending to show that the horse may have been known to the man in the Americas before the coming of the Spaniards.
Tending, the word tending and the word may is not very solid evidence, plus that's a Mormon book. It's not a...
I love this Gary Larson cartoon. For all the preparation and study I did, I'm about to suddenly realize something and spontaneously make my strongest point on this issue of where the Book of Mormon took place.
But there's talk of chariots and swords. That great big battle at the... Now wait a minute. You say these cities didn't... This big battle that took place at the hill, how do you pronounce it? The hill in New York? Cumorah. That's where the big battle took place. Tens and tens of hundreds of thousands of people died with swords. Nobody's found swords there, and this shows that this presumably, according to Joseph Smith, took place in North America, not Central.
The Hill Cumorah battle.
Yeah.
Where does it speak of that?
That big slaughter towards the end. That would be...
Do we know that's the same Hill Cumorah?
Yeah.
I don't believe it is.
The same what?
I don't believe that's the same hill.
So we got two different hills named the same thing. So it's got to be a second.
Let's read the verse. Let's look at the verse.
Yeah. Mormon chapter 6.
2-4.
Yeah, that's it, right. Yeah, in the introduction to the chapter it says the Nephites gathered to the land of Cumorah for the final battles. Mormon hides the sacred records in the hill Cumorah. So this is where he found the things. So it has to be New York. Therefore, it has to be North America. So your whole idea that it's Central America is not true.
I do have a magazine called Discovering Ancient America that contains an account of tons of archaeological evidence.
Well, all right. Well, let me read some quotes from the Smithsonian.
Okay.
Smithsonian archaeologists see no direct connection between the archaeology of the New World and the subject matter of the book. The physical type of the American Indian is basically Mongoloid. It's not Hebrew or Semitic. American Indians had no wheat, barley, oats, millet, rice, cattle, pigs, chickens, horses, donkeys, camels before 1492. Iron, steel, glass, silk were not used in the New World before 1492. Certainly there were no contacts with the ancient Egyptians, Hebrews, or other people of the Western Asia and Near East. And reports of findings of ancient Egyptian, Hebrew, and other Old World writings in the New World in pre-Columbian contexts for Columbus have frequently appeared in newspapers, magazines, and sensational books. None of these claims has stood up to examination by reputable scholars. That's the Smithsonian Institute, which is as reputable as you can get. So I would believe them before I believe a Mormon publication that's trying to justify their religion.
Did it say that they had no evidence of anything from the Egyptian, or anything for that matter? Is that what it said from the Missionaries or the Egyptians?
There were no contacts with the ancient Egyptians, Hebrews, or other.
I don't know. I think you better go down and look at the pyramids and things that they're finding down in South America and see exactly how similar they are to the Egyptians.
It doesn't mean they're Egyptian, though. I mean, they're not that similar. They're different.
They actually are very similar.
Just because they're pyramids, they're different looking pyramids, though.
They're very similar.
No, they're not. They have stairs.
Oh, man.
The other one doesn't. The Egyptian ones, I mean, I'm not that well versed in archaeology, but...
I'm not either. But,
but
I can tell you that the Egyptian pyramids are very similar to the ones that they find in South America. The design, the structure itself,
because when you build a pyramid, well, a pyramid is, you mean the stuff that they put inside it?
Yeah.
It's very similar?
Very similar.
Well, that's because human beings are human beings and they do things in similar ways, but that doesn't mean
of any other of the nations of building all of a sudden these pyramids with different things, you know.
But wouldn't that astound the archaeological world if they found Egyptian writing here in the Americas? And that hasn't happened, and it should have happened.
I don't know. I can't argue with you on this because, like I said, I'm not as well versed as I should be with the ancient America. I mean, the archaeological ancient America. I just have a few magazines that I've read, and the evidence is there of much Christianity. And
there's no evidence of horses, wheat, steel, elephants. There's no chariots.
I don't remember the elephants thing.
Elephants is.
Are they?
Yep. It's Ether 919. Useful unto men. It makes a point. So not only were there elephants here, men used them. To me, it's the only reason you believe this, I think, is because you were brought up in it.
No, I don't agree with that, because I was just as rebellious as the next kid, and if I didn't want to believe what my parents believed, I wouldn't believe it. The reason I believe what I believe is because I'm willing to talk to my God about it, and I know that He's answered me. And with that, I've seen the signs that follow those that believe, and I know that it's true. And I wouldn't deny that for anything. I don't care what the world says, because a wicked and adulterous generation seeks after signs. So I don't need signs. I don't need evidence. I don't need anything.
So what this Smithsonian person says doesn't make any difference to you?
Not a difference in the world.
See, I think that's sinful on your part. It should make a difference. It really should.
Because
I mean, how do you know you... See, I think I'm convinced you're, first of all, worshiping a God that is not there. You're worshiping the wrong God. The real God, first of all, like I said, is not so boring. And secondly, is a lot more moral, wouldn't be prejudiced against black people. It never occurs to you that Joseph Smith was just a con man?
No.
Look up the Book of Abraham on Wikipedia for confirmation that Joseph Smith was a con man.
But I'll guarantee you wouldn't have the depth that that book has got.
But there's no depth there. He's just talking about people fighting against people, coming and going.
You didn't study the book, you read the book.
Good insights jump out at you. Like I said, when I read the Malcolm X autobiography, that jumped out at me. When I read part of Dostoevsky's The Grand Inquisitor about Jesus, that jumped out at me, because he was saying an interesting insight in there. This is just reverential language without the ideas. I mean, he just keeps repeating himself. There's a chapter in I don't know, I think it's Jacob 5, where he talks about the wild and the tame olive trees. Yeah. He repeats himself. He repeats himself repeatedly in the first page, and then he repeats himself even more on the next 7 or 8 pages, and it's almost ludicrous as writing. Why?
And yet you didn't understand the allegory of the olive tree.
Well, no. I don't understand the wisdom of it. Tell me what is the wisdom of this allegory here?
Yeah.
He's just saying, wasn't he just saying that some people are going to be taken in the fold and other people won't, and it'll change. I don't know. What was it?
I don't really. I think I can't open up the book to you. Is the problem. I feel, honestly, I mean, I'm not there again, I really like you, I think you're very intellectual, and I appreciate you talking with us. But I feel that you were very close from the beginning.
Yeah, this is true. I had come to my religious conclusions before I even started this whole project 2 years ago. But even though my mind is closed, it's openable. If you say you can fly, my mind is closed. I don't think you can fly. But if you proceed to start floating in the air, I'll say, wow, was I wrong? but you can't.
That's exactly right.
And likewise, the stuff in here isn't, it's not from God.
The conditional love of Mormonism.
I think you're in a religion where love is conditional. It's conditional upon you believing it. If you don't believe it, then you don't get the love. In other words, I think you're trapped into what your family and your background, your culture and everything depends on you believing it. That's why so much you believe stuff that doesn't make sense. I mean, the only way I can say it is Mormonism makes even less sense than Christianity to me. And I think it's a whole fantasy world, and I think it's sinful not to. You have a responsibility to God, I say, to look at different religions and to question. But see, your whole religion sets you up to begin with to never question, not to question. And the worst thing you can do is to question. And that's the mark of a false religion, when you're not allowed to question. It's a lot of pressure on you to maintain all your beliefs.
You know why?
Yeah.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah, why?
Because I kind of fear. I fear God. What would happen? I know that these things are true. I know so much that the day will come that I'm going to stand face to face to Him. And I am going to tell Him. He's already going to know what I did. And I'm going to tell Him whether or not I followed Him. Because I know these things are so true that I need to follow Him. I know there's going to be a judgment day. All of us are going to be there. You're going to be there too.
I believe I'll be judged, but I believe I'll be judged by a different God than you live in.
Here's a quote from a book called Why We Left Mormonism by Latane C. Scott, page 119, a former Mormon speaking. There is such a spirit of fear associated with leaving Mormonism. Many people face the prospect of losing their mates, their jobs, their friends, their families. Add to that the fact that they have been taught that the only people who will be in hell are apostates, those who leave the Mormon Church. Page 95. When I left the Mormon Church, I lost all my Mormon friends. None of them would talk to me.
Of course, the Jehovah's Witness will say the same thing you're saying with the same amount of conviction. They're convinced. There's no doubt in their mind.
Yeah.
And you're convinced. Somebody's wrong. Or both of you are wrong. That's my opinion.
Well, hey, Mickey, we got to get going.
Okay.
We got an appointment 10 minutes ago that we're going to...
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Catch up with them at 3.
Well, I appreciate this time.
Yeah. Anytime.
People can listen to the tape eventually and decide who's right.
I am sorry if I offend some people, but I have to summarize Mormonism as just plain loony. I think it is a sad commentary on the human race that so many people can extend such deep faith to such shabby, specious theology. And I didn't even get into the subjects of sacred undergarments, beings from other planets, and other more esoteric Mormon doctrines. Thanks for watching. I hope you've learned all you need to know about Mormonism to dismiss it. I know I have.